Adam, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the solar eclipse that's going to happen next Monday on 8 April, and a couple other things, and how that ties into distractions. So, welcome back to Mish Mash Men. I am Adam Mauser, and my partner in crime, Mr. Dusty Labar.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
We're back with you again. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode where we talked about Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was pretty good. I'm now motivated to watch, or I was motivated when I heard the episode.
I probably watched all of them.
Yes, I watched every one of them.
33 movies.
So we're back with you again this week, and I don't know if you're tracking the news, but next week when this episode comes out on April 8th, there's going to be a solar eclipse.
I've heard about this, the solar eclipse for sure.
And for our listeners, solar eclipse, that's where the moon masks the sun in some regard.
Yep.
And so parts of the earth where it passes over the shadow, then it'll form a shadow over that sector.
It'll feel like it's night.
It'll feel like it. Well, the last time it happened, were you here the last time it passed over? The one that went down through the...
I think I was in South Carolina because you went to the library to buy the glasses.
Yeah.
That you could look at it. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to look at it without the glasses.
That was kind of neat. That was, man, I can't remember when that was. 2017?
It must have been, 17, 18, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't up here yet.
So, and I don't remember two of significant solar eclipses happening so close together. In fact, before the 2017 one, I don't remember, at least in the States.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Because anyway, they're not that frequent.
Yeah.
They're kind of unusual, and there's a whole bunch of warnings. You can go to a NASA website, and it'll give you the exact path and precautions to take and that sort of thing. So
precautions to do what?
So you
don't look at it?
Yeah, don't look at it. That's supposedly, it's like, I've never tested this theory, but so they say that you'll burn your retinas or whatever because the light going around the moon will kind of scorch your eyes, your retinas.
Yes, I don't look at it. I knew you weren't supposed to look at it.
Right.
That's why you buy those cool glasses so you can stare right at it and be like, ah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can do other things like make a little kind of a camera where you put a pinhole in a piece of cardboard, and in it, the light shines through, and then you can see it pretty clearly. I did that once when I was a kid. Okay. Even with something as rudimentary as cardboard and a pinhole. Yeah. It shines through, but it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's different. It's a full total eclipse, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the arc of it goes, so April 8th, like I said, but it goes through Texas, kind of enters at that section of Texas that borders Mexico, and goes all the way up through the south, up to the Midwest, and out the east over to Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. So kind of interesting. And it forms an X, and that X, from the last eclipse that went kind of through Washington, Canada, Washington, all the way down, the full eclipse view of it anyway. Yeah. That went down through Washington down to Texas. Okay. So it crisscrosses those two spots. I don't know if there's anything significant about it, but oddly enough, the first place that in the United States where there's going to be this total eclipse is Eagle Pass, Texas. Okay. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, that's like that prominent place where a lot of invasion was occurring. Yep. So the Texas governor sent the National Guard, and some other state law enforcement. Yep. And preventing the federal government from doing their thing. So there's been a Supreme Court issuance or a guidance over that lately, although they've kind of vacillated back and forth. But here's the interesting part. Okay. So that first eclipse that we just talked about in 2017 or whenever it was, I guess it was 7 years ago. It went through 7 or 6 cities called Salem. Okay. In the United States. And Salem, I don't know if any city named Salem is short for Jerusalem. Okay. And then this eclipse is going to go through 7 cities named Nineveh in the U.S. Okay. Which is kind of weird. Yeah. And so it's got the kind of conspiracy theorists, and I kind of count myself in that crowd. I don't count myself like, well, something's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
Or this is definitely a sign, but I take note of it because, well, that's unusual.
Yeah.
And if something like that, well, maybe we should pay attention.
Yeah.
So anyway, 7 cities of Nineveh. And what do you remember about Nineveh?
Has something to do with Jonah.
That's correct.
But I'm not sure what. So you should elaborate.
So Jonah, if you remember the story of Jonah and the whale, Jonah was a prophet. It's hard to say that without saying ooh ooh. There's a movie, a kids movie, where that's a song. Jonah's a prophet.
Ooh ooh.
Ooh ooh. So he was told by God, and this is the prophetic age when he identified prophets, and that's who he was going to speak through to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was told, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to tell them that I'm going to bring judgment unless they repent.
Okay.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
And Nineveh was I don't know if it's called a kingdom. It was part of Assyria, which is in present-day Iran, Mosul, Iran, along the Tigris River. So they were this kingdom, and he was told to go there, and he refused to go there. He tried going on a boat to run away from this task that God gave him. God spoke very clearly to him, and the ship sunk, and he was swallowed by a great fish, probably a whale.
Yeah.
And then spit out 3 days later on dry land, and then so he's now compelled to go to Nineveh. He does it begrudgingly. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to do it, and he goes there, and he tells, because he doesn't like Nineveh. Mm-hmm. The Ninevites were enemies of Israel. He doesn't want to go into their city and tell them to repent. He wants them to die. He could care less if God brings judgment on them. He wants that to happen.
Gotcha.
So that's what he's wrestling with the whole time. But he does it begrudgingly, and then they repent. They change their ways. Mm. And then he sits up, and the book of Jonah in the Bible ends with him just sitting on top of this, and he's like looking down on Nineveh, and he still doesn't care. Yeah. And that's kind of how the book ends. Like, he still didn't care, even though he obeyed God, but his attitude was just horrible. Yeah. So anyway, that's the story, and that happened early, like 790-ish BC.
Okay.
There was also a solar eclipse around that same time that went over Nineveh.
Okay.
And that's what has everybody excited.
Okay.
And there's some interesting little tidbits of information that tie that in there. So that solar eclipse, that took place around when Jonah arrived at Nineveh. And then there's discussions about how that ties into those cities of Nineveh in the U.S. And then, of course, in Nova Scotia, there is another Nineveh there that it's going to pass over, but we're just talking about the states. So that's really 8 cities named Nineveh in North America that solar eclipse is going to pass over. And it also happens on April 8th. And I don't know if you've kept up with, if you've noted, there's a lot of odd things that have happened the past year that have happened on the 8th. Weird announcements, prominent things have happened, like the Prime Minister of Japan, or former Prime Minister of Japan, Abe. He was assassinated on the 8th. Those kinds of things. So there's a lot of weird things that are happening, and a lot of these kind of signs that you might be a skeptic about it, but it's something of note. So anyway, that's going to happen next. By the time this comes out, April 8th, that's going to happen on Monday, I think, is April 8th.
Is that right? Monday.
It's a couple days before my birthday.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's exciting.
The 11th. Yeah.
Birthday.
So hopefully we're all still here for my birthday.
Yeah. Do you think there would have been the same, like, social media and stuff like that has exploded over the past 7 years for sure? Like, access to that. Do you think they would have, if it was the one from 2017 and it was passing over all those Jerusalems or Salems, do you think they would have the same weight as this one's having?
I don't know. I wasn't keeping track of that kind of stuff then,
as
much as I am now.
Sure.
Just because things are even more strange now than they were even just 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting interesting thought.
I always try to think about it from the side of like the stuff you hear about is like, you're like, whoa, this is crazy. But it also like, would it have been equally as crazy in 2017 or, like for instance, do you remember the swine flu? Was it 2009?
I remember the swine flu. I don't remember the year.
2009-ish.
Yeah.
Let me just ballpark it. It was a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anybody being as up in arms about it and that was like more of a problem than the COVID.
Yeah. The swine flu, Ebola, there were a couple of things that were supposed to like kill everybody.
Yeah.
And if it gets here, and that's where my mistrust in corporate media is really starting to like, I always had it as an adult. But it started to be like, okay, they keep talking about these events that are supposed to just end everything, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, they've done that forever about everything.
Yeah,
that's part of the game.
That's what tyrannists do.
Yeah, it's also like you read articles sometimes, and it's clickbait for these dudes. It's like you click an article, and you're just like, well, this is not even what the headline said. It's just to get you to click. I just was thinking as you were talking, I was like, well, I mean, you could definitely draw the same correlation to that one crossing over all those Salems to what's happening now. And I was like, I bet if it was reversed, like if this one happened in 2017 and the one in 2017 happened here, they'd have similar things to say about this one because there's some significance to it crossing over that many cities with the same name that have some significance there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and what makes this one interesting, it was so recent, the previous solar eclipse.
Yeah.
That it's crossing over. There's a lot of shared territory where they're crossing over.
Yeah.
And it's got this whole name link. That's what makes it remarkable to me.
Name link meaning
Salem, then Nineveh.
Gotcha.
It's just peculiar.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not placing any significance on it because I think it means X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, well, April 8th, I might be paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
And another odd thing about this solar eclipse, there's always the standard warnings about, don't look at the sun, blah, 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 use the safety glasses, etc. But this one's one of those where there's actually school systems that are going to close down that day on the 8th because of the solar eclipse.
Yeah.
Because there's a threat of power outages and that sort of thing. And it's like solar eclipses don't last that long.
Yeah.
I mean, in minutes, it's done. At least in that locality where you're standing. So, I mean, in 5 minutes, the whole thing's over.
Yeah.
Maybe 10. And then you go back to business. So what's the big deal?
I don't know. I had heard a bunch of stuff about that, about schools closing. I don't know. I mean, I read somewhere that they were worried about travel, like accidents happening. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you were like, Dusty, do you think that at the time a solar eclipse is over somebody that there's a chance there could be more accidents? I'd be like, yeah, 100%. Because somebody's going to be trying to look up at the solar eclipse as they're driving, or they need to actually turn their headlights on. They're not paying attention. Probably it definitely increases road hazards when whether they've done any decent research to decide if it's warranting to close it down or whatever it may be. Who knows? I don't really know the answer to that. I don't know why they would. I mean, I don't even know what time it's crossing over them. So if it was like, it's prime time school bus travel, I'd be like, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I've got it right here. What time it's going to go? I'm not connected to the internet, so it's not showing. So it looks like, I don't know. I know it's during the daylight. Yeah, obviously.
It's definitely not at night.
It's not at night.
It's not at night. We're not going to see anything, right?
Us, we'll see some of it.
Just part of it.
So if we go, it's going to cross, it'll be partially eclipsed to us.
Yeah.
The predominance of it is up through just south of Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, Missouri. It's going to hit Missouri pretty good. Illinois, Ohio, and then up through upper tier of Pennsylvania, like Erie.
Yeah.
They're in a sweet spot for it. They're not named Nineveh, though. Yeah, upstate New York and then on into Canada.
Yeah, so we'll be able to see something. It won't be totally.
Yeah, it'll look weird. We'll have a little bit of that. It'll still be plenty of light.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about those eclipses is those weird shadows that form.
Yeah.
Because of the just what happens to light. It kind of bends around a little bit, so you get these weird shadows and weird rays of light.
How many have you seen? Do you remember?
Two Two that I remember.
Like not counting this one? Like
not counting this.
2017 and another one?
And the other one was, I was a little kid growing up in Ohio. I was probably like 10 to 13 years old.
How many do you think have happened that have actually been total solar eclipses over the U.S.?
I don't know.
Because if it didn't cross you and media wasn't what it was today, you probably may not know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I guess I don't even, I wouldn't even have a guess to how many total solar eclipses happened over the U.S. in the past 100 years.
Yeah.
I want to find that out, though.
You can probably map that stuff. I know NASA keeps track of that stuff, so they probably have a map of the solar eclipses that cross over the U.S. or even over the world, just like where they happen.
Yeah.
And the frequency by which.
That would be interesting to know, because if it didn't cross where you were, you wouldn't even really think anything of it.
Yeah.
It would just be somewhere else. I wonder how many. We should look it up. We'll take a guess after this is over and see what you think it is.
So let's do that. So the last 50 years.
Yeah.
How about 100 years?
Last 100 years.
Last 100 years, number of solar eclipses.
Total solar eclipses that have been over the continental United States.
Yeah. So let's, I'm going to throw out a number. I'm going to say 52.
You're like way higher than I thought it was going to be. Dang. I thought you were going to be like 7. That's what I thought you were going to say.
No.
I'm going to say 30.
And you know, there's some of them that happen. I'm sure there were plenty happen between when I was 10 to 12 and 2017.
Sure.
But they just cross over apart. It's not made a big deal, but it seems like with social media, internet, there's so much more attention. Hey, look over here. Hey, look over there. Yeah. Again, that goes back to my gripe about corporate media. They just distract us.
There's probably going to be a solar eclipse and they're going to pass some crazy law.
Well, they just passed the continuing resolution.
What's that?
So Congress is charged with submitting a budget to be signed into law.
Yeah.
They haven't done it in over a decade, I know.
Yeah.
Maybe 14, 17 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they usually operate off these continuing resolutions, and that's what keeps the government going, including DOD. And so, but all of the federal government. And so this past 12 months or so, they just keep doing these continuing resolutions that only go out like 6 months or 4 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever it is. And so, I mean, it affects me at work because, if the resolution doesn't get passed, we can't go into work because the government buildings are closed. Now, my folks can work because we have a task. We can still do what we need to do to a certain extent without the government building being open.
Yeah.
Because the software folks, they just dial in, VPN in, and then they do what they need to do.
Gotcha.
So we can get a lot of stuff done up to a certain point. If it was like months, we might have a problem.
Yeah.
So they just submitted a $1.2 trillion bill. It went up to, I can't remember where it came back from, the Senate, back to the House with, of course, a bunch of pork. $1.2 trillion continuing resolution that got approved by the House. And so then it should go back up to the Senate, and then our president.
Yeah, he's doing good.
Well, he's rock solid.
He's doing pretty good.
He is coherent.
Yeah.
He's concise. He's crisp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Solid.
How much, I know this is off topic of solar eclipse, but how much drugs do you think he was on during the State of the Union?
So I would guess maybe a gallon of Adderall.
I mean, it had to be so.
And then all the other stuff you got to take if you're on Adderall.
Yeah.
To avoid the the nausea and all that other stuff.
He was juiced.
Yeah.
I mean,
he went up there and yelled for an hour or so.
He was out of his mind. He was juiced up.
It was.
I want to try what he's on because I feel like I'll be able to build a house by myself.
Oh yeah, in like a day.
In a day, I'll just be like, I don't need you guys. I'm gonna do this myself. I gotta.
Did you watch that thing?
I watched part of it. Like realistically, it just felt like it was not the State of the Union. It was just a campaign speech.
That's all it was.
It wasn't that really like you're like okay. Are you going to say anything about the actual State of the Union?
Yeah.
And he's like, good. Gas prices are down.
Yeah.
You're like, from what, $7? Yeah, I guess so. But he didn't really say anything of substance. It was all just like this campaign rhetoric BS that
it was rants.
You're not supposed to use it for that. It's a State of the Union address.
Yeah,
it's the State of the Union
from the perspective of one portion of the government.
Yes.
To the most prominent and should be the strongest portion, which is Congress.
Yeah. And
it was embarrassing.
Yeah, I didn't think it was good. He obviously he did. If you're talking about just strictly talking as a human, better than I expected.
That's why I watched it.
So yes, so better than I expected. He had like 2 flubs, and the one was like not even that bad, but I mean he's juiced up. You could tell. I mean he's totally like amped up, and then like it's almost like when you pull the string on a toy, and it's like, and then as it gets to the end, it's like starting to slow down. That's what it felt like. It's just like they had juiced him up to get him through this thing, and then and they got him through it, and they probably were all like, whew, that was close.
Yeah. That whole thing. So I watched it because I knew I wanted to talk about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and it was painful to watch. I started watching out in the living room. Then I was like, I got to get to bed because we had to work out the next day, and I'm sitting there fighting sleep trying to watch this thing. I kept dozing off, and I'd wake back up, and he's just still ranting about minutia and his pet projects and his hobby horses, and telling the Supreme Court they need to get this right. It's like, look. The Supreme Court they're on par. They're not 3 co-equal branches of government, but you don't tell another branch of the government, yeah, you need to do this. That's not your domain.
Don't you think he would have legitimately like undecided voters? Don't you think he would have been way more served to make it like an American message versus a like let's make America strong or this is the State of the Union and we're like
we're doing great.
Like if you were undecided and you heard that, you probably might be like, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. But I feel like from my perspective, if you're undecided, you're like, well, he didn't even say anything. Like he just said about his stuff. Like he didn't say anything about the stuff that I care about.
That's what the feedback was from those focus groups that media usually have is like, yeah, he just talked about his pet projects. It wasn't about the State of the Union.
Yeah, he also just, I mean, he doesn't look good.
No.
Yeah, he's probably going to be staring directly at the solar eclipse, if you know what I mean.
Well, that might help us out.
He's got the perfect goggles for it.
Yeah, the squint.
Yeah, he's just like looking at it.
And he'll mumble something.
He's yelling at the eclipse.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah.
So you brought up earlier about social media and the media at large. They bring a lot of attention to stuff.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on? Are they doing that to distract us? Is there something legitimate here? Not necessarily with the Ninevehs and all that sort of thing, but
my knee-jerk reaction is, and this is social media too, is like, how can I get the most clicks? Like that's my knee-jerk reaction is like, there's definitely some, there's something interesting or fascinating, or you could take it as like a sign or something that is running through these cities that are all the same name. Mm-hmm. You could definitely do that. You could draw some parallels and do some different things, which is fine. But I think a lot of it's like like social media, the media will take anything to blow it up to try to get people to watch because it's boring. Like, and the same thing with social media. It's like, how do I get people to like stop and watch my video?
Right.
And if you're the crazy tinfoil hat guy being like, hold on a second, let me tell you something. But I mean, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like the guy that's on Instagram doing it for a certain reason.
Yeah.
Like that guy's on Instagram saying his thing, but really he's trying to get as many views as he can get. That's ultimate. If he goes over, if that guy goes on there and says something super sober, that's like boring. Like he's not getting clicks. Like he's doing it to get for a reason. That's my initial knee-jerk reaction is that like we don't get to my what I want to feel like is that there's probably not a lot of these that happen over a lifetime. Probably not. So you said 50 and 100 years.
Yeah.
So there's probably not a lot to happen in our lifetime, and I think it's cool. Like so not a lot of people may ever see these. Like I got to see one. There's going to be people in a string across the country that's going to see one. It's like an event that a lot of people don't get to see, and I think that's cool on that side of things. So I'm like, it's cool to me that they're going to be able to like, you know, you go outside with your kids, everybody has their goggles on. You're like, you know, this is maybe the only time that you'll ever see this. Yeah. This may be the only time your entire life you ever see this, and it's happening right now.
In its entirety, yeah.
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 So
sure.
So it's like a cool thing on that. I'm always like a little bit like, I see stuff on. This is not just this. I see stuff on Instagram or like the media, and I'm like always so like, oh my god, it's like tiring.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh my god, it's not like how like and all this stuff comes. It's like you ever see Parks and Rec?
Sometimes.
You know Ron Swanson?
Oh, Parks and Rec. Yeah.
You know when he's
I love Ron. That's my hero.
He's like selling the flutes to the guys that think the comet's coming.
Yeah.
And he's like,
that's right.
He's like, every year I make so much money. That's what I feel like. These guys are like, we know what's going on. They're like making this. That's what it feels like. But there's definitely something like when I watched it, I was like, oh, that is super. My initial thought was like, that's super interesting. It's crossing over that many cities that are the same name that have some kind of significance. Like that's my thought. I don't know what the significance is. I just mean it has some significance.
Yeah, it's particularly interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting and it has some significance, and it's also I feel the same amount of interested about the fact that that was Salem 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I feel the same amount of interested about that too. Like it's cool. Like I think it's cool. It's some kind of thing that you can make it what you want in your with your view on it, and I think that's cool too. So.
You brought up, and this ties back to that State of the Union and what the president probably could have talked about, because the American people are hungry for, hey, are things getting better?
Yeah.
What is the state of our union? This is a perfect opportunity for the media to highlight that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yet they keep distracting us with these things.
Yeah.
So is that for clicks, or is that to keep us distracted? I say distracted, obviously, because I kind of lead the witness in that question. But they're pointing over here to this thing, and they're pointing over here, and they're pointing over there. And are they distracting us?
Distracting us from what?
Like that's the question.
Just something.
That's question 2.
It's hard to say what, like, I think they'll tag onto anything. Like they're not doing good.
But if they wanted to tag on, I mean, that's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
If they wanted to tag on something. And what people apparently are hungry for is like, how are we doing? Are we getting better?
Yeah.
Independent of whether or not we're getting better.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they could, through propaganda means, make it seem like things are getting much better than they are.
Yeah, they could.
And start highlighting things, and they could focus our attention on that. So why aren't they doing that instead of these things?
It's way easier to say things about something that's not happened. Like that's not happened and you have no idea. It's just a celestial event.
Yeah.
Versus saying something that I could go look up the data on it. Because you could be like, gas prices are down 500% and everything's great. And I could go on and look and be like, are gas prices down?
Yeah.
And be like, no, they're not. Like they don't want, people I think are definitely more than ever willing to be like, that might be BS, and like look something up.
Yeah.
And that's what they don't want. They ultimately don't want people to challenge them. They want to say like, look here,
100%.
Look at this stuff. And because there's nothing's happened. Like, so I can say, well, what about this? And you're like, well, yeah, what about that? But if I say something that, like, to you saying like the country's better now than it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago.
And they are saying that. The politicians are saying that.
They are. But most people, you're like, more than 50% of people are being like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they're saying like, oh, huh? And then we're, nah, it's not.
I think you're right. I think the media have lost a ton of credibility.
Yeah.
People are fed up with them.
Yeah.
And they realize that they've been duped. And they're starting to wake up to that fact. And they're not paying attention. They're not paying for subscriptions.
Yeah.
They're ignoring personalities that are supposed to be trustworthy.
Yeah.
And how do I know this? Have you looked at the number of media outlets that have gone out of business and are laying off?
I haven't. Oh, it's probably a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah, I bet so.
There's whole, I don't have the list. I didn't mean to talk about this, but it's a good thing to talk about. Laundry list of those kind of mid-market media organizations that are just like, hey, we're shuttering everything.
Yeah.
Releasing the reporters, shutting the doors.
Yeah.
We're not open anymore. Because people are fed up. They are tired of being lied to. They see it every day, and they recognize, hopefully, we might be getting distracted with things that really don't matter. They're mildly interesting, but largely irrelevant because there's this other thing going on that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Like, continuing resolutions with a bunch of pork in it.
Yeah, it'd be way better if you focused on this solar eclipse than it would be if you focused on this thing over here.
Yeah.
Is a lot. I mean, I think that's probably especially if you're one of those new like media outlets like CNN, it's probably way better if people focus on that versus the other thing. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. And CNN, I don't know why they're still in business.
Yeah.
That other than they're on every airport.
They're just a mouth of something. That's all it is. Yeah. They're just a talking piece to be like, look how great this stuff is and look how bad this other thing is.
Yeah.
Everybody. You know what I feel like? This is legitimately what Dusty feels like. I feel like these idiots are trying to cram crap down my throat on a daily basis. And like, I just want to open the news and be like, what's the weather today?
Yeah.
Like, how are stock prices? And then you're like, well, what about this terrible thing that may happen? Or did you notice this thing? And I'm like, yeah.
And so-and-so's a racist.
Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. But what about the weather? They're like, we'll get to that in a minute. That's not important. And they're like, well, it's important to me. I'd like to know. And I feel like these people are just like constant, like, it's just a battery. Like, you have to have a shield up. Because it's just from every direction. People are just punching stupid crap at you to try to get you to turn and look. It's just like somebody screaming. It's like, just like, look at me, I'm doing something. It's like, well, it's not good.
No, it's not.
And like, I'm sure there's many people that feel like me. You're just like it's tiring. You're just like, golly, you can't even, like, I can't even flip on Instagram and look at like pictures my friends are posting of their babies, and it's cute. It's like, okay, here's your friend, but then also, have you seen this? And you're like, God, I don't want to see that. Yeah. So like most of the time, I'm just like close it off. I'd rather just text them. You know what I mean? At this point, because it's just like all nonsense. So, and I feel that way. Like you can't flip on the news. You can't flip on anything if you don't, because it feels like I feel like I'm getting beaten down.
Yeah, I think it feels like. I think all the corporate media is pure propaganda. I don't even watch it anymore. The only interface I have with it is my work computer. It defaults whenever I open a new tab. It's a Windows machine. I open up a new tab, and it has, I can't remember which news venue it is, but it's a Microsoft product, so probably MSNBC. Yeah. And it just posts a bunch of junk, and it's clickbait, all of it, even the headline stuff, clickbait. It's distracting. Yeah. But a lot of folks, at least in the past, I think, again, more people are waking up, but a lot of folks in the past, that's where they got their news. They heard it on the news bits that are like, the 2-minute long news break or 30-second, whatever it is. I would when I started really, really paying attention about 4 or 5 years ago to that, I was listening because I knew what happened because I listened to or I read the thing that they were talking about. And I was driving to work one day, and I hear their view of it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, they're given this hyper skewed perspective that it's not close to being fair. And it didn't matter if it was Fox, if it was CNN, if it was ABC, NBC, none of it. It did not matter. Mm-hmm. I think they're all in bed together. Yeah. I think they're set up to be, a yin and a yang. So we're distracted by both of them. And I got my side. Let's say that I'm a CNN guy and I'm a liberal Democrat. And I love everything that they say. Mm-hmm. I hate those Fox News people. They're idiots. Okay. Or I'm a Fox News guy. Like, those people are idiots. In the meantime, while I'm bickering with my CNN counterpart or my Fox News counterpart, they're passing these continuing resolutions, and I'm getting distracted with, the danger of a solar eclipse. Yeah. In the meantime, they're passing this stuff and giving $800,000 to open a drag queen story hour up in museum in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe a silver lining is that I've heard people my age and multiple different ages talk way more about, have you heard what these people what they're trying to pass through a bill, or like are being more educated about the stuff, like, because I don't know that. I think that's a byproduct of what they're trying to do, is like you almost feel like somebody's trying to screw you over. So you're like listening to those little things like, is that true? Like somebody would be like, they tried to pass a relief bill for Ukraine, and it had these things in it. You're like, why would those things need to be in a relief bill?
They don't.
Like, they don't. It's because these people have to make agreements to put certain things in bill, and they don't want you to know about them, and nobody's reading the whole thing, and they're all just saying, I just need this.
It's that omnibus and minibus phenomenon that Congress awarded themselves, that ability to just pile on a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And the beauty of that is, we talked about this before, the reason why they're all a big fan of it is, let's say you're opposite side of the aisle, or you're running against me for this Senate seat, but you've been, we've been kind of partners. So from the same state, but now you're going to take my seat, or you want my competitor, your friend, to lose. Well, we've had these omnibus bills, and we've been passing them. It has just enough stuff in there that's bad for both, for typical American, to where I can use that as campaign stuff. I can throw campaign stuff like, well, Dusty voted for this bill that had $800,000 for mice research, sniffing cocaine. Yeah. And then you can say the same thing about me. And then in the meantime, and we do it on the interviews, these little sound bites, they get posted on campaign ads. And in the meantime, all the other stuff that's going on, it never changes. It's that uniparty mentality that I think we're dealing with. And I put Republicans and Democrats in the same boat. It's uniparty. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I even feel the same way that you said about like Fox News versus CNN News. Like, it's all some nonsensical, like, life is not life is not black and white typically. Like it's gray.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of gray area. And so for you to think that there's like, I mean, it's bad on both sides. There's good people on both sides. And for it to just be like this hard line drawn in the sand and you make like these crazy claims on one side that aren't true. And then these other guys are making crazy claims on the other side that's not true. And it's literally just to get people fired up because that's the emotion they want. They want people either scared or angry. That's like the two best emotions. They don't want to put the funny things on or they don't want to put like things that are, I think that's probably why stand-up comedy right now is doing so well. This is my opinion, that stand-up comedy is doing so well because it's not that. It's the opposite of that. So versus only strictly waking up every day and being angry or fearful of something, that you're watching these dudes and you're like, this is funny and it's relaxing and it's like almost a breath of fresh air because in the time right now is from both sides. If you watch either one a certain way, you're either scared of something or angry about something. I think right.
I think by design, that's what they're doing.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like that, these like I think it's like people are essentially going to their news from stand-up comedians because they can get it in a way that's funny and not stressful, and there's like a little bit of truth to all the jokes and like all this kind of stuff. That, you know what I mean?
Well, they're good at pointing out the hypocrisy of both sides.
Yeah,
because they get us angry at each other, and if that's all we're focused on, we're not focused on the real tyranny at hand.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what we see. So anyway, solar eclipse, 8 April. This episode will come out 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks from now.
Okay.
From today, which we're recording. We don't actually record the day it's released. I don't know if I'm telling a dirty secret that no one knew.
No, I feel like people probably know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Friday the 22nd of March. So 8 April, this episode will come out just before the week before that.
The week before that. So please do not look directly at the solar eclipse.
Yeah, don't look at the sun. Set up your cardboard pinhole camera. And be wary, be suspicious, be particular about what people could be distracting you from, because I don't think it is a solar eclipse and there could be some crazy stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But pay attention to what the politicians are doing when they're distracting you.
Somebody should be keeping an eye on those folks.
Yeah, because they're the ones spending our money.
Yeah.
We get taxed to death, 33%.
Yeah. Is that all? Did you see that?
At least.
Before we end, did you see that meme that was like, the Powerball winner will win. It's the Powerball's at $1 billion. The winner will get $400 million. And somebody on like a Twitter thing underneath was like, "Congratulations to the government on winning the lottery."
Yeah, exactly. The lotteries, they're a tax for the poor. That's what they end up being.
That's it. So
somebody wants a big windfall.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully we prize your comments. Please like and subscribe us on every venue possible.
Yep. Including Rumble.
Including Rumble. Yeah, we're on Rumble now. Hopefully we won't get canceled there. Yep. But stay in tune for 8 April. Hopefully something really interesting happens. We'll see.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.